Hello and welcome to the webinar where we'll tell you how to scale agility in practice using SAFe approach. My name is Rafał Kwatek. I work at SII as an offering lead, responsible for the development of training offering, but also as an expert and trainer in the area of service, project, and agile management. I will be the host of today's meeting. The webinar will be conducted in the form of an interview and discussion. So if you would like to ask any question, write it down in the chat box and I will use it during our discussion or at the end of the meeting during Q&A session. And now I'm giving the floor to our main guest, Marcin Cieśliński, who works at SII and acts as an enterprise agile coach. Marcin, please tell us a few words about yourself.
Hi, hello. Thank you, Rafał. Welcome, everyone. My name is Marcin. As Rafał mentioned, I'm an enterprise agile coach working for SII Poland as well. Basically, I'm a practitioner, so I have over 15 years of professional experience with Agile. I've been working in the vicinity of a Scrum Master, a product owner, an Agile coach, currently working mostly as an enterprise Agile coach or release train engineer with SAFe. So I'm going to try to give you some tips and hints from my regular practice. I have my next PI planning session starting on Monday on. I've been working with SAFe for 6 years now. So I have quite a couple of PI planning events and SAFe PI implementations behind me as an experience. So I'll be happy to share my knowledge and experience with you today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcin, for your self-introduction. Let's go back to our main topic, scaling agility. We can say that this matter is getting more and more popular. But isn't it just another buzzword that many people use, but no one understands it? Please explain us what is scaling agility for you.
Rafał, I think you use the right word, buzzword. For a lot of people, scaling agility is a buzzword, and I've seen that actually quite frequently recently. I've been experiencing that myself as well for a couple of months at least. Where the customers say, hey, we want to scale Agile, but we don't really know what that is. So this is the way I usually explain it to the customers. If you look at into an Agile team, you're going to see a collaboration between the team, the product owner, and the Scrum Master. All right. Now, scaling agility is about creating that collaboration or recreating that collaboration between multiple teams and often multiple products. All right, so we may have one or more product owners, one or more products. We may have dependencies between those teams. The challenge is to set up the operating model of the organization in such a way that value for this product or solution that the teams are working on gets delivered, right? Because a lot of companies are really good at working in Agile on a team level. So they say, hey, I got 10 people and they work on in an Agile environment and they do it very well. And yes, when I see them working in Agile, they do it very well. Now, the challenge is that these folks cannot scale it up, cannot group together with another team and another team and another team. So if you want to create a product that includes 50, 60, 100 people, you've got to synchronize that work. This is what scaling agility is about. The goal is to work on multiple products, again, within multiple teams in a coordinated manner, while being able to retain that agility. And by agility, I mean the ability to adapt to changing priorities. The other goal of scaling agility, I'd say, is to ensure that alignment and synchronization for all the team members, right? So all the 50, 60, or 100 people should really well understand what are we working on, why we are working on such a thing, what's the end game, what's the vision, how that solution, how that product is going to work when it's finished, how is it going to benefit the customer, all right? Now, I think before we move on, one important thing, because you mentioned scaling agility and I started talking about agility on a team level, I wanted to come back to the agility term itself. Ari van Bennekom, one of the co-creators of Agile Manifesto, has recently said that there will be no Agile anymore. All right. Now, what's going to happen is Agile will just become a new standard way of working. So nobody is going to say, I work in an Agile way or I work in a traditional way. Agile is the new normal. Actually, it's starting to happen right now. So if you want to succeed in your business, you've got to be able to scale that new normal, the new starter way of working up, right? I think this is the best definition of scaling agility I would give for the moment.
Okay, you explained it very well, so we know now the definition. And I would like to ask you, why is it worth to scale agility? What are the benefits for the organization as a whole and also for the particular people in this organization?
I think I would give two answers to this question. One will be trivial and one will be a little more complex. Let me start with the trivial one. So we know that the vast majority of companies, if not all of the organizations, currently operate in a changing environment with challenging and competitive environment, right? So you got competition, you got a lot of customers that are demanding new stuff, new functionalities very fast, and if you don't deliver, your competition will, and you will lose your business, right? So you got to deliver high quality fast, all right? Now, the solutions you deliver as a company in that case often require dozens of people working together. That includes also vendors, and that increases complexity, right? So if you want to retain that ability to adapt to changing priorities, and your customers keep asking for new things all the time because the technological progress is huge, and right now all the businesses are based on technology, whether you like it or not. Look at Tesla. It's an automotive manufacturing company. They're the automotive leader in the US, but hey, they're a software company pretty much. If we look at our local market, the largest bank in Central Eastern Europe, the former CEO of that bank said that, hey, we are a software company with a banking license, right? All the major businesses right now stand on technology and on software. And if you want to meet the ever-increasing demand, you really need to catch up. You really need to scale up. That's I would say, the trivial part of the answer. But let me go a little bit deeper, the more complex side of things. Customers don't want you pushing the solutions. You want to sell them. So metaphorically, they don't want you to shove your solutions down their throat. Right? They don't want it anymore. They don't accept that anymore, right? It used to be the standard way of working 10, 15 years ago, but right now the customers are more aware than any time in history. And if you don't meet their expectations, they're just gonna turn around and they're gonna go to your competition. They want you to meet their needs, their expectations. Now, part of that work in that case is consultative selling, which means you've got to be the advisor that is not only asking the customer, hey, my dear customer, what are your needs? Tell me what do you need? Tell me what's a priority for you. But in many cases, you need to uncover that for the customer. I used to work in business intelligence, and it always worked in the same way. The customers always said, I will know it when I see it. So show me what you can do, show me what your application can do, show me what your technology or your business solution can provide, and I'll tell you if I like it or not, right? Because quite often customers don't know what we can do and don't know what they like or what they don't like. So we've got to be the guides trying to uncover those requirements and the needs of our customers, right? So that's I would say, design thinking part of the story. And based on that, you need to focus on value delivery, right? If you want to address the needs of your customers, you need to make sure that all the 100 people, 500 people, 1,000 people, they are focused on value delivery. So they look at the operations of our business. They look at the operations of the customer. They look at that process from concept to cash. How do we get money from the customer? What do the customers value, right? And we deliver the solutions that, again, are more and more complex. We've never delivered such complex solutions as we are delivering right now. And in a month of time, I'm going to tell you the same thing. We've never delivered such complex solutions that we are delivering right now. So the complexity is ever increasing. It's growing exponentially. And again, that requires collaboration between multiple areas, silos, departments, often geographically dispersed in different time zones, right? And it's not going to work if you don't put these teams together and make sure they are aligned with a common vision, common mission, and common intent of the work. I'll give you an example. A phone, right? If you want to create a phone, well, it takes time, right? Basically, let's say it takes a year to create a phone, right? Now, if you have a set of requirements and you start working with them, after a year, if you create a phone, what's going to happen? Well, your customer is going to tell you, okay, well, that's a nice phone. Well, actually, that used to be a nice phone a year ago. Right now, I don't need half of the features that you have in there, right? Because they are obsolete. So what you have to do is you have to create a complex cyber-physical system, a phone that is consisting of a hardware part, the software part, the applications, and the operating system, and so on and so forth. It's a complex system, and you have to create it. And at the same time, during the process of development of that phone, you need to be able to adapt to changing priorities of your customers. And in order to do that, you need to be agile, not only on the team level where you've got 10 people that can do the job, but 10 people are not going to deliver you the phone. You need hundreds of people working on that. So you need to coordinate that work, coordinate that cross departmental communication and collaboration between those teams, right? That's really important. And without scaling agility right now, I'd say you're standing where you are. That means you're going behind and your competition is going forward. Scaling agility, I think the last sentence here, scaling agility is what Agile used to be, I'd say 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Agile used to be a new hype, a new way of working, something that provided your company with a unique competitive advantage. Right now, everybody knows how to work in an agile way, more or less, on a team level. Now, if you want to gain that competitive advantage, scaling agility is the way to go. Some companies already do that. So if you don't do it, you'll stay behind. If you'll do it, you'll catch up, you'll be there.
Okay, high quality, fast delivery, meeting customer expectations, building complex products. It sounds very interesting. But I think that many people are questioning, is scaling agility for me and for my organization? What organization can scale agility? Only those high-tech big ones? Or maybe we can use it in other industries and in the smaller companies as well?
The high-tech big ones, I think, are the obvious example, of course. This is what first comes to our mind. If you think about Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, or Amazon, they release their product every 10, 15 seconds, right? So there's a new release of their software. So definitely they need scaling agility. But scaling agility is not only for those large technological tycoons, I'd say. I've been working with smaller businesses in multiple sectors. In healthcare, I've been working with medium and large enterprises from financial, telco industry, pharmaceutical industry, retail. I think what's important is that that scaling agility is for any company working on delivering products and services that require collaboration between multiple teams, both business and technology-wise. It can be adapted to both IT and non-IT environments. So, for example, I have experience in implementing Scaled Agile Framework into a marketing organization, for example. Of course, it is for small, medium enterprises that are looking to maintain their customer focus amid their business scaling up and the silos is growing. It's also for large enterprises trying to regain that customer centricity. If you look at the different companies that that used to be a startup and then they started growing to the size of a big enterprise, you quite often see that a lot of those companies lose the customer focus at some point in time because they're such big. You got so many people, so many department silos that you don't need the customer anymore to start working, to have something to do. So large companies need that Scaled Agile framework to focus back on delivering value, to focus back on that customer centricity. Of course, it is also beneficial for organizations working with multiple suppliers, not necessarily in an agile way. But if you ask me as well, who is scaling agility for? I've been asked that question frequently in companies or in businesses that operate in a regulated environment, like the financial industry or pharmaceutical industry. And I can tell you, Scaled Agile Framework works great there as well, right? It's a framework. We can discuss that later on what that really means, but basically you are able to implement compliance issues, legal issues, quality issues in there as well. So regulated industries are very successful in implementing SAFe too. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to SAFe as a tool for scaling agility. Martin, you are a certified SAFe trainer. Very good one. And being honest, it's obvious that as a SAFe trainer, you are recommending and using SAFe. But on the market, there are other methods and approaches for scaling agility, like, for example, Scrum of Scrums, Disciplines Agile Delivery, Large-Scale Scrum, Nexus, or Scrum at Scale. Some of them are developed by the most well-known agile experts like Ken Schwaber or Jeff Sutherland, co-authors of the Scrum Guide. Why should we then use SAFe instead of other methods and approaches?
It's actually a very good question. Okay, I am a strong advocate of SAFe as a very thoughtful framework. It's got its pros, it's got its cons, but let me tell you one thing. There is no silver bullet for everything, right? It's not that, one framework is way better than all the other ones. For some companies, less is going to be fine, or Nexus is going to be fine. Now, if you ask me why SAFe, again, probably there are a couple of points we can touch on here. First one, and that's going to also be a little bit of criticism, I think, towards SAFe. It's a great operating model combining best practices from other approaches, right? So if you look into the Scaled Agile Framework, you're not going to see a lot of new work. A lot of the things, most of the things, if not all of the things that are there, are derivative, right? So you're going to see things taken from other working solutions. You're gonna see elements of Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, lean, business model canvas in the portfolio management, right? Weighted shortest job first, which is a prioritization technique in SAFe, is also invented by Don Reinertsen, not by Scaled Agile, right? So the way SAFe is working is that they are gathering the best practices from different approaches, the ones that really work. They're gathering, they're putting them together. So kind of SAFe is growing, right? SAFe is actually acquiring, I would say, or merging into their ecosystem all the working solutions from different approaches. So I think that's one of the reasons that you always find something that's working in SAFe, among other scrums as well. SAFe is great for managing inter-team dependencies, great for aligning teams through common backlog and mission, and this is one of the core values of SAFe as well. SAFe is great because it's a framework. The F word in this case is framework. All right, so SAFe tells you use whatever technique you think is necessary to the extent that you think is required. There are just a few exceptions, like PI planning. You've got to do PI planning. If you're not doing it, you're not working in SAFe. But other than that, you are quite flexible in choosing which components of the model you should be using, even though some critics say SAFe is very strict and rigid in that case. It's not really the case. And last but not least, I think let's talk numbers. Digital AI, a company known previously as version 1, issues an annual State of Agile report, and we are about to get the 15th version. It's not yet on the market, so I'll use the data from 14th version of that report. Annual State of Agile report is the most comprehensive report describing the state of Agile in the world. The 14th version saw over 40,000 people respond. Okay, and these were different people from different industries, from technology, from finance, from healthcare, from marketing, from IT, from retail, energy, multiple sectors, multiple positions. So there were developers, scrum masters, product owners, agile coaches, but also directors for software development, business and commercial executives as well, C-level executives. So 40,000 people. And one of the questions they were asked is, what approach do you use to scale your agility? Now, let me give you this. 35% of respondents said they use Scaled Agile Framework. And then 16% of respondents, which is 19 percentage points less, right, said they use Scrum of Scrums. By the way, Scrum of Scrums is also part of Scaled Agile Framework. And then all the other ones that you also mentioned, like Disciplined Agile Delivery, LESS, Nexus, Scrum, they all got, I believe, between 1 and 4 percentage points, right? So, of course, there was like a don't know other answer, which was about 28%. But basically, if you take into account all the major scaling agility frameworks, scaling agility approaches, you're going to see that Scaled Agile Framework is by far the most commonly used. 70% of Fortune 100 companies use Scaled Agile Framework to some extent, right? So if you don't believe me, believe the market, right? People will not use it if they don't believe it's worthwhile.
Okay, you clarified very well SAFe advantages. We can see that that this tool is the leader of the market, but I think that this is just one side of the coin. For sure, there are some disadvantages. Please tell us what are the main issues raised by the SAFe critics, and what is your opinion about them on maybe what are the cases when we should avoid using SAFe?
Okay, so what's the criticism for SAFe? So basically, the critics of the Scaled Agile Framework say it's too structured, it's not agile anymore, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I think they're partially right, but on the other hand, I've been a managing director. I've been in a managerial position on a leadership team many times, and I can tell you, while agile on the operating level, that's great. On the top level, on the executive level, on the P&L accountability level, you need more predictability. You need more control. You need more process. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to have 100 people and they can do whatever they want. They're going to work in an agile way and we don't really have to care what they're doing. You need some kind of a structure in there. You need some kind of an alignment. You need some kind of a heartbeat and cadence of the work that you're going to do. All right, this is what SAFe is for. So a lot of critics say, yes, SAFe is too structured. There are too many processes in there. My response to that is that it all depends on the implementation of the framework. I'm coming back to the F word, which in this case is framework again, right? It doesn't mean that you have to bring the Scaled Agile Framework as you see it on the scaledagileFramework.com website and say, hey, this is exactly what we're going to use. What it means is that you have to take into account the context and the specificity of your customer and adapt that framework in such a way that it is still compliant with the values and principles standing behind the manifesto and standing behind the Scaled Agile Framework. And on the other hand, it's going to work. It's going to make your customer's life easier. This is my perspective as a consultant, as a person that supports multiple companies in implementing SAFe in their organizations. There are some challenges, though. Of course, there are always challenges. It's not that easy. But maybe before we talk about challenges, you asked about why we should avoid SAFe. Well, one thing is because it's very structured, and if you don't really need that kind of a structure because you have like 20 people, you don't need, you don't need to implement all the components of the framework, though you can still apply some principles. So make yourself aware of those principles and reconsider, think how you can improve your agility based on those principles, even with those 20 people. You need to have experience. Okay, if you don't have Agile experience, well, it's hard to scale Agile if you can't do Agile on a team level, right? And the third thing is don't expect huge results quick. All right. Now, I've seen some companies saying, hey, Scaled Agile Framework says that our time to market will be increased by 50%. So I want this done in a month, right? That's not going to happen. You're going to see some improvement, but the numbers that Scaled Agile Framework gives you are case study numbers that from companies that really work on that journey, that actually are in the process of SAFe implementation or have implemented SAFe for multiple quarters. All right. So yes, it is a challenge. Yes, don't expect significant results quick, but do expect some results in short term as well. And make sure you understand that at the end of the day, if you have hundreds of people to manage, you need some structure, you need some process. Otherwise, it's, you're not going to be able to control that.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Otherwise, you would have chaos. But okay, we know the pros and cons of SAFe as a tool. But let's go to the organization willing to scale agility. You mentioned about implementation. I would like to ask about that. In your opinion, what are the biggest implementation challenges for such an organization, and how to deal with them during the implementation project?
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, first of all, I'm gonna tell you from my experience from the 8 or 9 PIs that I've been supporting. So first of all, I would say the general organizational resistance, right? So yeah. and let me give you a couple of examples here. I had a manager, right, and this guy was managing a team of 20 people, right, and this particular organization, that was a telco organization, was very hierarchical. So your power was represented by how many people reported to you, right? So if if you're corresponding in any, by emails with someone, you want to see whether you should be respectful to that person. You're looking at the Active Directory. You're looking at how many people report to that person, and whether you're talking to a big fish or you're talking to a small fish. I mean, that was the practical aspect. So we said, okay, let's try implementing Scaled Agile, right? You work in an Agile way. Let's try scaling it up. Now this guy was really doubtful and was really resistant. Why? Well, he said, he thought, and he said, and we had that conversation. Well, I'm a manager now. How will that look in the future, right? So right now we're working in teams. We have a hierarchical structure. We have kind of a little bit of command and control approach, which works great because in many cases, we know what to do. Right now, you're going to change that to an Agile way. And we're going to have Scrum Masters, product owners. Where's the management role, right, in this? What's going to be my role? What's going to be my power? What's going to be my influence in this, right? So again, that's the change management part. What's in it for me, but not for the organization, but for me as the manager of these 20 people, right? Now, how will that affect my job? How will that affect my responsibility, my power in the company? Now, if I lose my position, then no, I'm not going to be a proponent of that change. I'm going to resist that change as much as I can. All right. So that's one of the aspects of general organizational resistance. So it's a lot about understanding what potential issues people might have, especially those managers that with the potentially changing structures. the way you can also approach it is not change structures, but reorganize the teams and still maintain that reporting relationship, right? So do not move the hierarchies, do not move the structures, but reorganize the teams around to work around products or services that you want to get money for from the customer. The other important aspect is that some people did not really like their work to be visible, right? Because, well, let's be honest, some people said, hey, you know what, I can just, sit by my computer, do something, kind of report 8 hours, and that's going to be it, right? But then again, if you work in an agile way, agile puts a lot of, Scrum, for example, puts a lot of emphasis on transparency, right? And agile scales that up as well. One of the core values of Scaled Agile Framework is transparency. So again, we want to make sure all the work is visible. We want to make sure that if we have any blockers, we shout it out. We try to work together to remove that impediment, right? Which means that all your work will be visible, which means that if you're lagging behind, if you're not doing anything, everybody's going to see that quite quickly, all right? The other important challenge was the lack of leadership commitment, right? So I've seen a lot of leaders that said, well, yeah, maybe we should do that, maybe not. It's a fundamental change in the way people work. Okay, it's a fundamental change in the way people function in an organization. Now, if you don't have a leader standing behind you, nodding their head, saying, yes, this is the right way to go. Yes, I firmly believe, I'm convinced, and I'm going to help you out. I'm going to punch through all the walls of resistance for that change. Then it's going to be very hard to succeed. All right. In order to increase that leadership commitment, we start that implementation with leadership training. We want the leaders to understand that, to help us kind of customize that framework to the organizational specificity, and then we can start working with those leaders. They need to believe in that, and they will make sure with their inspirational attitude and their charisma, they need to make sure that people believe in that later as well, and they know that there's something for them as well. I had the misfortune of working with a couple of customers that said they are agile. I don't know, maybe they thought they were agile because they had Scrum Masters and they used Jira, but that was not the case. So one thing is saying that you're agile. The other thing is behaving or having an organizational culture that supports agile values and principles. And in many cases, that was not. In many situations, that was not the case. So we had a company that said, yeah, we're agile. That was a manufacturing company. Yeah, we're agile, but on the other hand, it's kind of a patriarchal agile. So we have the highest paid person actually make the decisions, and there's no justification for that decision, right? It is what it is. I take accountability. Don't discuss. Let's do it that way, right? That's not really the right agile way, the right culture to build commitment and share responsibility within the team members. And maybe last but not least, I've had some companies asking me, hey, you know what, Martin, we've seen that, there's that Scaled Agile Framework approach. We want to go safe. Well, but do you have agile teams? No, we don't. We don't know what agile is about, but we want to go safe, right? So I got a daughter that turned a year yesterday. So I'll give you that maybe small child or baby metaphor for that. If you want to start running, you gotta first learn how to walk and first learn how to crawl. Okay. So before you start using Scaled Agile Framework, make sure your teams are proficient and understand and embrace that agile mindset, that lean agile mindset on a team level. All right. Once they have this, yes, we can build on that, but this is the foundation. SAFe calls it team and technical agility. This is the foundation. If you don't have it, you can't scale it up. It's like with a house. You want to build a house, you got to have solid foundations. If your foundations are weak, whatever house you build, it'll be turned down at some point in time.
Okay, so we can see that this is not only about the tools, about the process, but also about the management, the mindset, the leadership, and that we have a lot of challenges in implementing SAFe. So probably it's a huge organizational transformation project. So as that, it has to be well planned. My next question is, what would be the common schedule of such a project, and how long will it take?
That's the question I always get from the customers. How long will it take? I hate to give you that answer, but it depends. All right. Now, I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. I am a consultant, so yes, sometimes I have to say it depends.
I like it.
But let me elaborate on that a little bit. It depends on where you are right now in your agile journey. It depends on where you want to be. So what's the gap, right? And how committed you are. So usually we need to start with the training. We need to start with establishing the value streams, the first agile release train, defining that, creating that first agile release train, running that first program increment. So the start of the first agile release train, which marks kind of the first point of the benefits that you may have, is usually, from my experience, it's between 1 to 3 months of work. All right, that's the first agile release train, the start of the first agile release train, from the point that the customer says, hey, okay, let's start working on this, right? So there's a lot of work in terms of training, in terms of processes, in terms kind of mapping the processes, identifying the current processes, in terms of establishing the tool set, in terms of establishing roles and responsibilities, in terms of preparing for the PI planning event, in terms of course, identifying the agile release train and the value stream that we're working for, identifying the operational value stream, the process. So that's the first art. And then but the full SAFe implementation, that's not a project. That's a continuous journey, right? It does not end. It's an ongoing process, but usually in order to initially your first activities, your first program increment planning is going to be quite chaotic and rusty. Usually by PI number 3 or PI number 4, which is, I don't know, roughly 9 to 12 months later, you're going to work as a well-oiled engine, right? Like a well-oiled engine. So it takes multiple quarters to a couple of years for full SAFe implementation and to see the results that Scaled Agile Framework advocates as the results that you can get when you fully implement the model.
Okay, so couple of years. So it sounds like a long journey.
Yes, multiple quarters to a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay. So, but you said a few words about that, but I would like to get some more information about this beginning. You know, every journey begins with the first step. So, what should we do first when we want to implement SAFe in our organization?
Are you asking what do we start with?
Yeah. What's the starting point, and what actions do we need to do at the beginning?
Okay. As Simon Sinek says, start with why. All right. And I'm going to start with that because really there are a lot of customers that heard, hey, SAFe is great. Let's go start working with Scaled Agile Framework. And honestly, not all of them need it. Right? As mentioned, Scaled Agile Framework is a great way of scaling agility, but it's, not all the business may need it, right? If you have a very predictive business, maybe the traditional approach is fine for you. Though there are fewer and fewer of those predictive businesses right nowadays. So basically start with why. Start with understanding what is your expectation, why you want to go into that framework. Why you want to go onto that journey. And then everything good usually needs that support from the top, right? This is a fundamental change. Again, I've mentioned that already, I believe, but basically you need that leadership commitment. So we start with why, then we train the leaders, and we usually have a change agent or some kind of a person that is in the meritorical charge of that Scaled Agile Framework transformation, right? This is, for example, a SAFe program consultant like myself. So we train the leadership And we do also trainings for other stakeholders. So we train the leadership, we train the Scrum Masters, we train the teams, we train the product owners, right? So, for example, in SII, we also provide all kinds of those trainings for different stakeholders. And this is actually very, I think, one of the good things that Scaled Agile Framework provides, a customized training for a particular role that you should play in this Scaled Agile Framework concept, right? So if you're a product owner, you can have your own training. If you're a Scrum Master, you have a Scrum Master or Advanced Scrum Master training. If you're the portfolio manager, we've got a lean portfolio management training for you. If you're a release train engineer, if you're an architect, if you're a DevOps, if you're a team member, we've got a customized training for you as well, focused on your particular role. And then again, start small, take it step by step. All right, so I've seen a lot of companies saying, hey, you know what, let's start with, let's put already a couple of hundred of people working together, let's create that portfolio level, let's have a large solution level, let's implement full safe, right, from the very beginning. That's not going to work. Or at least, sorry, that's not going to work. No, period. Okay, I'm going to give it a definitive statement based on my experience. It has never worked that way, and I've seen many companies wanting to do it that way. And I always say the same thing: start small, take it step by step. So figure out one value stream, one agile release train, one virtual team of agile teams. Put them together, start working. See how it is, right? Because 70% of your learning is learning by doing. All right, I can give you all the theory you want, but at the end of the day, 70% of what you learn is by experience. So you got to start rolling out. You got to see what's working, what's not working, how to improve. You got to adapt. Okay, and once you do that, you will learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you in terms of the specificity of your business. And based on that, you can then accelerate. You can then launch additional Agile release trainings, maybe launch the portfolio level. But first, start small and take it step by step. That's the way I always approach the beginning of a safe journey for any company.
Okay. You said start with why, so let's start with it. When we discuss with our customers about the agile transformation and safe implementation, they usually ask us about the benefits. What benefits will they get and how those benefits will be measured? They are not interested in the theoretical methodologies and frameworks. They are concentrated on the practice and they want to achieve goals set to the project by the organization. So what are, in your opinion, success criteria for such a project?
Okay, again, I'll start with a trivial answer, and I'll finish with I think the most valuable one at the end. So the trivial part would be, if you go to scaledagileFramework.com, you're going to see a nice, I think it's a big circle that gives you specific numbers regarding four different areas. It's time to market, it's quality, it's productivity, and this is engagement, right? 4 different areas. Now, what I always tell my customers, don't get attached to those numbers, because those numbers may be different. So, for example, in terms of time to market, SAFe says it's going to be between 30 and 75%, if I remember. So roughly, let's say 50%, right? So my customers, well, tell me, hey, Martin, does it mean that my time to market is going to be reduced by 50%? And I always say, no, it means that if you implement SAFe, if you go on a full journey, then in a couple of quarters or in a couple of years, you're going to see similar results depending on where you are right now. Because if you're very good right now, maybe that time to market reduction will be smaller. But if the bar is set quite low, maybe it will be higher, right? It's an average from the case studies. What I always tell them, okay, my dear customers, you are going to see improvement in those 4 areas, right? Time to market, productivity, quality, and team and customer engagement. Now, how big? It depends on where you are. It depends on how you approach it. It depends on your commitment as a leadership and the whole organization to implement Scaled Agile Framework. That's one. Now, the other part of the trivial set of the answer would be, I'd say, greater visibility and alignment across the organization. So we got people understanding what's happening, understanding what's done, right? We got people delivering value predictably, right? So that increased predictability of value delivery, that is super important. Because if as a business you promise something to your customers, it doesn't matter if you promise that much or only this much. What matters most of all, is whether you keep that promise or not. Because if you promise this little and you still delivered, the customers will be more satisfied than if you promised this much and you did not deliver. All right. So predictability and reliability of your commitments, that is super important. And this is what SAFe focuses on as well. Now, this is what you can find out when you start working with SAFe, or you go to scaledagileFramework.com probably. But from my experience, the most important success criteria in SAFe implementation is the ability to apply SAFe to that very specific context of a particular organization. Because again, anyone can take the scaledagileFramework.com website content and say, hey, this is the way we're going to work. The trick is to be able to customize it in such a way that the organization feels comfortable with it, that people feel comfortable with that it makes their life easier. Let me give you a couple of practical examples. Example number one, SAFe says you will have 5 iterations in a program increment, and by definition they are like 2 weeks iteration or what. What we did, for example, is 6 iterations for one of the customers in a PI planning event, in a program increment. Why? Because, well, it was holiday period, right? And we knew that, people are not going to be very present. So we extended one particular PI by this one particular iteration, still retaining the IP iteration, the innovation planning iteration. Another example, PI planning events. Right, the one that I will be leading right now as an RTE is going to be a 3-day PI planning event. The standard agenda from ScaledAgileFramework.com is a 2-day PI planning event. We're going to have 3 days. I've also facilitated as an RTE. I've also facilitated 5 days 5-day PI planning events. Of course, it was not 8 hours a day. It was 3-4 hours a day. Why? Because we had people from India, from Europe, and from Brazil. And we needed a shared time zone that was around roughly 2-3 hours a day, right? So other than that, the teams could work in their own time with their own dependencies. That's it, right? So yes, it was a 5-day event. Another example, simplified weighted shortest job first. If you take a look at the model, it's going to tell you, hey, we need to use user business value, time criticality, risk reduction, opportunity enablement, for example. And split the aggregation of that should be divided by the job size. That's going to give you weighted shortest job first, the number to prioritize your features. We often use simplified weighted shortest job first, just taking into account business value and the job size. That's it, right? It gives us an initial idea what to focus on next, especially if business owners or product managers are not available enough. And if we ask them to prioritize all the other features, we want them to focus on the features that have the best business value to job size ratio, right? Of course, there are different tools you can use, right? You can use Jira. We use Jira on a regular basis together with Big Picture. For example, you can also use Jira Align. You can use Klaxoon, for example, for surveys, right? You can use Miro, Mural. There are different tools that you can use. The best is the tool that most people understand. Okay. Another customization that you could use is the role sharing, right? So, for example, if the Agile release train is small, I used to work in a company with a company that from a healthcare industry. That was the smaller Agile release train. It was like 35 people. So, for example, the product management and the product owner role was shared, right? We could do that. That's not a problem. It's not maybe the super recommendation of SAFe, but I think that we could adjust. It was still in line with the SAFe principles. So yeah, it worked well. So yes, be able to take that experience and customize that framework in an aware way. That this customization adds more value than brings more harm, or rather than brings more harm.
Okay, we can see that SAFe implementation can be very beneficial for the organization, but life is not always sweet. It flows like we want it to be. And I can agree that implementation by the book, it's not a good idea, and it won't work. You need to have experience to customize it to your organization. But for sure, we can say that many companies are struggling problems and are dissatisfied with their agile transformation. What is that? Why is that not all SAFe implementation are successful? What should we avoid in order not to fail during such a project?
Implementing Scaled Agile Framework is a huge fundamental change for the organization. So apart from all the reasons I mentioned as to what you have to look out for, like that general organizational resistance or lack of leadership commitment or lack of agile experience, there are all the aspects of change management that you have to take into account. And for me, I think the most important aspect of the change management that if you don't have it, it makes it makes the SAFe implementation pretty much impossible or very hard to do, is that vision communication, right? Lack of vision communication, to be precise. So in my 15 years of experience and all over 6 years with Agile or 7 years with Agile, with Scaled Agile Framework, I have never seen an over communication of a vision. Never, ever.
Okay.
All right. There is no such thing. So keep reminding the people what the vision is, what the mission is. Because if you have 100 people on board, you're going to have 100 interpretations of what has to be done and why we're doing a certain thing. All right. So make no mistake, there is no such thing as over communicating the vision, but it's super, super easy to under communicate that vision, right? To not communicate it enough. So if you do it once every year or once every, half a year, just, 2-3 sentences, that's not going to work. People will lose the sight of why, right? People will lose the sight of the purpose of the end game that they're running towards, right? So that you need to make sure that that vision communication is there. You need to make sure you have an experienced change agent on board to lead the way, like a SAFe program consultant. This is the meritorical person that will lead the way, that will be a partner for the business executives, for the leadership team, to support, to tell you how things should be done and what we could customize, what we should not customize in terms of Scaled Agile Framework implementation. And I think the third reason why SAFe implementations don't work is that some people approach it very strictly, right? So they say, hey, this is Scaled Agile Framework, we're going to do it by the book, and let's see what happens. You've got to customize that. The real magic happens when you customize that framework, right? In an aware way, I'd say, right? But you've got to do it. Other than that, otherwise, it would be super easy. Everybody would do that, right? But it is, after all, a unique competitive advantage.
Okay, so let's go to those successful SAFe implementation. From your experience, can you give us some example of such an organization and tell us a few words about their journey towards business agility and how it was, what were the benefits, and other things connected with the project?
Okay. Well, for obvious reasons, I can't use particular names, but I'll give you a couple of examples, and I'm going to try to kind of group them. What worked, why they did it. So I had for example, there was that medium-sized healthcare company. There was a large retailer. There was a large pharmaceutical company. And a multinational financial institution as well, for example. And I think these were these were all tied up with the same rationale behind going for Scaled Agile Framework. People understood why they are doing that, right? So the leadership team that I was asked by to support, to help that change, they understood the need for that change. They understood that urgency. They knew that if they don't do it, they're going to stay behind in the market, right? And the competition will outrun them. So they said, yes, this is a major change. We need to do that. This is of a strategic importance, and we need to be there. Okay. So first, that's the urgency of that change. Then it's the leadership commitment. And again, and for all of these, the schematic was the same. We identified the agile release train, the value stream. We coached we launched the first agile release train, and we learned from it, right? Tweaking, customizing, again, learning and learning. That was a continuous learning and continuous development experience. All right. So I think what really works is, again, having those people, having those experienced people on board. It really helps for the organization to understand and embrace the agile mindset, right? For the leaders to be committed, right? And for the leaders to communicate that vision on a continuous basis. That helps, right? Generate that short-term wins, show what happens when you start working with SAFe, that what happens that would not happen if you didn't work with SAFe. For example, identifying dependencies between teams. If you don't work with Scaled Agile Framework, if you don't plan together during the PI planning event, you're not going to identify those dependencies between teams. So whenever we did that, I pointed it out, saying, hey, thank you for identifying that dependency between those two teams. And again, we wouldn't be able to do that if not for the PI planning event that we have right now. So there you go. You see the value of that event. Hopefully that will convince you that it's worthwhile doing it. So, yeah.
Okay, every transformation project needs to have some quick wins to get stakeholder engagement and commitment. Can you give us some example of such a quick wins for SAFe implementation project?
Sure. First one is actually identifying our value stream, actually putting down on a piece of paper or in a PowerPoint presentation the process from concept to cash, from the trigger when the customer says, hey, I want this, to the moment where the customer pays us the money, right? We know why they're doing it. We know what the customers value, right? So that's one thing, kind of putting that in place. The other part is optimizing that value stream, focusing on the delays and cutting them, reducing those delays, right? Figuring out what steps of the process are not needed, do not add value in that process. The third benefit, quick benefit that you can get, is a list of the features that are prioritized across different teams, a shared common understanding and a vision of the solution, right? Represented by the top 5, 10, usually 10, 15, or 20 features. All right, this is what we're going to do. And you communicate that to the people, and that's the fourth benefit. 100 people or more people understand what we are doing, understand why we are doing such a thing. So they understand how their small work on a particular story, on a particular task, how it contributes to the greater vision, to the greater solution of that we're going to sell to the customers, right? Rather than them just being pawns or pieces in the machine, they are actually really important and critical to the success of the Scaled Agile Framework. Yeah, I think those are the first short-term wins. And then again, all these aspects of uncovering dependencies between the teams, resolving those dependencies between the teams, right? Finding the compromise or negotiations between product owners, between teams. This is something that is also a short-term win with the Scaled Agile Framework approach that we have.
Okay, Martin, we are running out of time. So at the end, can you give us some practical tips for someone who wants to start scaling agility with SAFe?
Sure. Okay. I'll be very brief. First, really figure out if it's for you. Why do you want it? Okay. Not because I was on a great training, but because it's really beneficial for my business. Then make sure the leadership says, yes, it makes sense, let's go for it, I'll support it. Get yourself somebody experienced on board that will lead the way, that has actually seen a lot of it and seen different implementations in different industries and different business sizes as well. And then start small, okay, and treat it as a continuous learning journey, okay? Do not expect super significant results very quick. Start small and take it step by step, PI by PI, iteration by iteration, developing and moving forward. I think that would be the quick tips that I have.
Okay.
All right.
So our time has come. So that was the last question. Thanks, Marcin, for your time and for your expertise. Thank you all for listening, and I would like to encourage you to visit our website and see our offering in the area of Agile training and consulting. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us via email. And what else? Thanks once again, and see you.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to connecting with you as well. So feel free to ask me any questions you have using that contact form that Rafał has just presented.
Actually, one more thing. We've got some question on the chat. Can you see it?
No. Can you read
okay, I will read it.
Sure.
We work in a SAFe. There is 4 Scrum teams in the art, and every team already has its products and developed, and some to maintain. In the SAFe, theoretically, teams should pull the features, enablers, or tasks from higher level backlog, program level, to the team level backlog during PI planning, and work off them afterwards during PI. How does that happen in practice? How do you share the responsibility when teams, for example, aren't keen on taking additional projects or features and the responsibility for them to their team backlogs? How would you approach this kind of a problem in practice?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, the best practice is to make sure that the teams do not see the features on the PI planning for the first time. All right, they need to see the features before. So this is why we have that IP iteration. This is why we socialize those features actually on a regular basis throughout the previous PI, right? And then we discuss with the product owners, we discuss with the product management. Now, if the teams do not want to take on additional responsibility, additional features, the question is why? Is it a matter of capacity? Is it a matter of skill? Is it a matter of the culture of not willing to take responsibility? But if it's the last of these, then we need to ask maybe the leadership to make everyone aware that is the shared responsibility of the whole art to deliver. So someone pretty much has to do that. Now, if we lack capacity, if we lack skills, that's a different story. Then we need to, if we lack capacity, we need to talk to the product owners and the product managers and prioritize the work. If we lack skills, then we need to include HR and make sure that people get the training they need. This is our job as managers to provide the people with the right system. If we, yeah, I think these are the two. Let me see. I'm reading that question right now. If so, there. Yes, how does it happen in practice? So basically what we do is, again, we socialize those features throughout the PI, saying, hey guys, these are the features. We talk to the product owners, and basically the features are split between the teams based on the product owner business domain expertise, mostly, because we want to make sure that the product owner is the right person to answer all the questions that are asked by the team with this. If the teams need some skill upgrade, then either we provide training or we provide additional resources to those teams, or just as, for example, we're doing right now, and for one of my retail customers, we're establishing a new team that will help as well. I hope that answers the question, Pavel.
Okay, so Martin, thanks for this answer, and thank you all for your attendance. We encourage you to contact us directly and ask us more questions about SAFe, about Agile, and about scaling agility in practice. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.